things that go bump in the night and what scares us. That's what we're talking about today. Those fears that you have acronyms for it, such as false evidence appearing real. Yeah, well, whenever I hear something going or moving around in my basement, it doesn't feel or sound or feel so false. Or then there's the other acronym, fudge everything and run, which is a lot of times what I want to experience. But we want to look at what kicked off our beginning fears and how did it lead to the fears that we have today? Because we're only born with two fears, the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. Those are gone around 18 months to 2 years of age. And then after that, every fear that we have is learned, but we're predisposed to learning certain types of fears. So, Angie, what scared you as a kid?
So, I mean, this is gonna go deep fast. I grew up in a home of domestic violence.
Okay.
So it was my mom being verbally and physically accosted.
Okay.
So
And
uh,
and what did you make that mean?
as the way that I know what it means is how I feel in my body now. So
Right.
I when I get triggered, this sounds so silly, but like if I have these necklaces on and if they get tangled up in each other and like if this gets a knot, or it just like an impossible knot to get out, it creates this feeling of almost panic and a feeling
Yeah.
of being out of control. And I'm like, what is this about? I mean, that's such a silly little example, but there are times when, like, owning a business, you do not necessarily control cash flow or when people
Right.
are going to set appointments or when they're not, or when they're going to back out or blah, blah, blah. And sometimes I get that feeling of out of control,
Mhm.
and and that takes me back to what I felt like back then, is just this
Right.
feeling of like, this isn't fair. This is out of control. I'm
Mhm.
powerless. And it's a sucky feeling,
It
you know?
is that powerlessness and feeling like something has power over us. We don't have that agency. We
Yeah,
don't have that freedom for choices is one of the four pieces of learned helplessness that we'll
that's what it
talk
feels
about.
like. It feels like
Yeah.
learned helplessness.
Yeah. Because it is learned.
Hmm.
Um,
So
my,
that's what I made it mean. I,
okay.
I just that life is not safe.
Yeah. Well, it's not whenever everything gets into a knot and you can't
Yeah,
get it untangled. I
that's true.
mean, we deal with the subconscious, so we understand the symbolism behind that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, my earliest memory of my father was I was about a year and a half old, and he was watching a spooky movie on TV.
Hmm.
And the primal, what was showing up, what was so in my gut, even after only being a year and a half old, I knew it wasn't right. And I remember putting my hands over my eyes, and he
Hmm.
took my hands and he held them behind my back. And
Oh,
he made me watch the spooky movie. And so we look at when we do the analysis of events in our life, we're like, okay, what did we make this mean about other people and or the world?
hmm.
And so I learned at an early age, I was just going to have to look at it. I was
Mm,
going to have to look at it. I was going to have to see it, but I couldn't do anything about it.
mm.
I'd see it, but I'd freeze because of it. And so,
Right.
like you, the world's not, it's not a very safe place, and I can't rely on other people. but I still have to watch. And so it led to, as an adult, sometimes in my own life, watching things turn into an absolute dumpster fire shit show, and then freezing and feeling like I couldn't do anything about it.
That makes sense.
So there are 3 categories of fears. And whenever I was researching today and what we were going to talk about, I found it interesting where I found a great amount of information. Remember escape rooms and how they became so popular for people? Yeah. They put out, for the people who are running those franchises, information on how to kick off people's fears. And there were 3 categories of fears. Primal. Now, primal fears show up whenever there are things that were like, oh no, that's not safe whatsoever. So
Right.
for example, there's a guy down the street from me that does this massive Halloween display.
Yeah.
And we're talking dozens and dozens of what looks like corpses hanging from his trees.
Oh my gosh.
Wrapped in spider webs. And the front yard is an absolute horrific graveyard. And so I'm walking my puppy past it. And the dog's like, okay, things are floating in the trees, no big deal. And oh, there's stuff on the ground, no big deal. But when the guy added to it, and he put out these skeletons, but they were spiders that are about 4 feet wide.
Oh my gosh.
And we go walking by, and the dog saw those, and he's like, oh no, He knew on an instinctual level that is something in real life that if it bites me, yeah, we're in trouble. So and as people, we have those same things, right? Those primal fears, snakes, spiders. And we want to look at, whenever we think about our very earliest memories of things that scared us, which category might it have been in? Because primal fears, or also known as primitive fears, are what can show up as phobias around insects and animals. So if someone was exposed either with an imprint that was serious enough just one time, or with repetition to things that were primitive or primal, then it can show up as what is known as those primal fears later on of things out in the wild.
Or like fear of water, heights, any phobias would fall under the primal fear.
Yeah. Okay. Then we have rational fears. Rational fears have a foundation in reality. People can't be trusted. People lose their temper and they go too far. Not everybody says yes whenever we ask them to work with us. And so for some people, whenever we look at those earliest imprints, and it was something that could be replicated in real life, well, it sets up rational fears in today's world, but we've overblown them. We've gone into learned helplessness. And learned helplessness, there's 4 P's. It's pervasive, because once it starts in one area, it'll spread to others. It seems to be permanent, like there's nothing you can do to change it. It's personal. You feel like you're broken, you're flawed. There's something about you that needs to be fixed. And it's power over, power under, that the subconscious is displaying the symbolism of who we are internally as really, really small, frightened, and whatever boogeyman is coming after us is very large and overpowering. And so if it's a rational fear of something that really could happen, we can find that it actually has power over us because of those 4 Ps, and we haven't learned how to turn them into progress.
What were the 4 Ps again?
Yes. So it's pervasive,
Mm-hmm.
permanent, personal,
Oh,
and power over, power under. I always know when someone is trying to control me or manipulate me whenever they make a comment about me that they want me to take personal.
ah, right, right.
You have somebody losing their temper or being passive aggressive and they say something to you, they're trying to infect you with fear.
Sure. Like they're
Because,
insulting you or
yeah, exactly. So if you can stay stable, then you run less of a risk of being manipulated and controlled.
of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the last category are what are known as irrational, or I like to call them immature fears.
Okay.
These are fears where we accepted, because of that earlier imprint, we accepted that things were going to be a certain way, and it never matured. It never upgraded. In fact, whenever that fear gets triggered, it is not who we are today with our education, wisdom, and knowledge. It's who we were when that imprint first took place.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at immature fears, we're simply looking at something that has not fully integrated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems
So
like it could be a little of both. You know what I mean?
it can, they can definitely overlap.
Yeah.
The idea is to say, well, what do we do with it? How do we move forward?
Right. Right.
How do we use this? So, what do you like to give your clients as far as tips, tools, and techniques whenever they're dealing with the fear? How do you like to assist them?
A couple of ways. Hypnosis is great, to help to rewire the beliefs around these phobias and fears.
Okay, so speak more on that. Rewiring beliefs. What does that mean?
So our beliefs are housed in our subconscious mind,
Mm-hmm.
and some we're aware of and some we're not aware of. And so when we do hypnosis, we bypass that the conscious thinking mind, and we get to where the belief is stored, which is in the subconscious, and we start working to communicate with that part of our brain to help change the belief. It could be through imagery or words and imagery to help change that perception of reality from whenever it happened, whether it's primal, rational or irrational. That's where they're found, is these fears and these phobias, and so we can
Mm-hmm.
start to reprogram them through
Yeah.
the hypnosis. Yeah.
And what age do you typically find when you're working with a client utilizing hypnosis to rewire the brain? What age do you typically find that these fears were accepted as a belief that this is how the world needs to be?
Usually by age 7, 8, like most of their beliefs are formed because at that time, that's when the ego mind is created and we can start to rationalize things
Yeah, and filter and decide what we want to keep out.
right, right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's usually a young part.
Yes, and one that didn't understand power,
Mm-hmm.
or that they're not responsible for everything or everyone in their environment, that they can say no, that there are boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So I always liken it to a trash can with the lid open, and whoever comes along with enough repetition or enough intense emotion and dumps trash in,
Mm-hmm.
then that's what we're dealing with later on, which is the reason why I talk about dumpster fires.
And also that we have that hypnosis script, take out the trash.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get that cleaned up.
Because
Mm-hmm.
what we remove, then we replace with something more empowering, like I am lovable and capable.
Okay. So talk about that for a moment, how we just can't clean up the trash.
Yeah.
We have to replace it.
Yeah. Because there's like the mind will not accept a vacuum. And so we need to, if you're going to remove something, it just makes sense that you want to be intentional with the hypnosis to replace it with a different belief. So, because if you don't replace it with an intentional belief, it will default to another belief of not of your choosing that may not serve you. So like if you were to stop smoking, and you didn't replace it with a healthy activity, like, to drink water or to do whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that it might replace it with overeating.
Yeah. Oral
So that's a
fixation
good
for oral
example.
fixation. Yeah.
Right, right. So we want to be intentional. So when we do hypnosis, we pick something, we pick a replacement belief. So if we have
Mm-hmm.
felt powerless, then why not feel lovable and capable? Replace
I
it with
like
that
that.
belief. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Um,
Or that I am safe now as I go through my life, like in the case of me with
right.
my dad, that I am safe as that was a young part, and that men are safe and that I mean, because that's a belief too. I mean, I said life isn't safe, but I think it also meant that men are not safe. Our
Yeah.
protectors should be protecting us, not harming us.
Right. And
So
and yeah, so
so that I could
upgrading the
replace it with
belief.
I am parenting myself. Like I can trust that um, part of me to parent me, to comfort me and protect me, no matter what's going on out there.
And so you just came across something that's so important for the woman who's going, I don't want to live with this fear anymore, is that the new belief needs to be actionable.
Hmm.
That it is not just enough to go, yeah, I'm safe, but it's like, okay, I need to reparent. I need to find ways to make myself safe.
Right.
And so, because we have fight, flight, freeze, appease, also known as fawn.
Mm-hmm.
So, to begin to regulate the system, it needs to be able to take an action. And just thinking
Right.
oh, this is what I believe now, I'm safe. No, if you had a, a small child, a little girl with you right now, and she wasn't feeling safe, it would be more than words you would just give her. You would create an environment through actions that would have her safe.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
beliefs after the age of 13, for the subconscious to accept them, they have to be actionable.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you just said right there, reparent her
Yeah.
and
Um,
love her into
uh,
it.
since we're talking about fear, this is a body somatic exercise, and this is so super simple. And I just thought I'd throw that out there, Don. I don't know, maybe
Yes,
you've heard of it
do
before,
it.
but like when we're in fear, one way to calm our nervous system down. Well, another of my favorite is emotional freedom technique. So I'll often combine hypnosis and that. But this is something different. It's actually a sound. And what you do is you take just a couple normal breaths in and out, one, and then you do the second breath. And on the third breath, you just take a real deep inhale. Like imagine that inhale coming up from your groin area all the way up to your mouth. And then
Mm-hmm.
you say the word VOO, VOO. Have you heard of this?
No, go ahead.
It's that simple. So you just take a couple breaths, and then on
Mm-hmm.
the third breath, a deep inhale, and then you exhale and you say VOO, VOO, as long as you can keep that exhale.
Mm-hmm.
And then something that you can also do is put the hand movement in there of VOO, because what it does is it's calming the vagus nerve
I
and the
was going to say, this is
yeah,
Vegas, just like a
it is.
humming.
It is.
Yes.
And it's VOO, but I've heard it from a couple sources now of trauma specialists. And then you can also do the hand movement when you say the VOO of like pushing your hands away, like
Mm-hmm.
VOO, and then just, it's almost like you're regulating your nervous system and you're saying away, get away. Like like you're a
Yes, I'm drawing a
protective
boundary.
parent. You're a protective parent. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
this
So
is
isn't
how
that
I
cool? So
stabilize.
simple.
Yes. And so that can be a great one. I always tell people if you find yourself in an environment where you're being triggered, and it might even be a meeting at work, excuse
Yeah.
yourself for a moment, go into the restroom and do these activities. That is something very simple. You wouldn't necessarily want to
Yeah.
do it in the middle of the meeting.
I have one that you could do in the middle of a meeting and no one would know it.
Okay.
So you can see my hand. I don't know. I can only see you right now, but we have these tapping points on the tops of our fingers. So like you can do it on your fingertips while your hands are underneath a table or whatever.
Right.
Most people, like you could tap on your fingertips and they're not going to know what you're doing. Like it doesn't matter,
Right.
So you do, you take your other hand, your dominant hand, and your hands facing towards the ceiling to show you like it's the upper digit of each finger. There's a meridian point here, and you can just tap. Like if your thumb is facing towards the ceiling, you tap
Right.
the part right there, and then on your index finger and on your middle finger, you skip the ring finger. There's none on the ring finger. Your pinky finger, and then on the side of your palm.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, or you can just, I don't know if you can see this, like if you don't want to do all that tapping on the hand, you can just take your thumb and tap on your index finger, that upper digit.
That first digit.
Yeah, and cover your hand so that no one even sees you're tapping your fingertips.
Okay.
But that's super simple.
It
if
is.
the area that you want to be discreet, and then one more is right at your collarbone. If you just tap right there, that looks pretty natural, right? If you just bring your hand up to your collarbone and just kind of tap there, most people are not even going to notice that.
Okay. And then the two that I like to give is 4x4 breathing.
Yeah.
To where it's also known as box breathing. You breathe in for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, out for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, and then start all over again. Do a few rounds of that. Now, there's another one known as psychological sighing, to where it's in twice through the nose, really brisk, and then out through the mouth. People are going to hear that one. Right. So the 4x4 breathing is also a great way to regulate yourself. Because whenever we go into a fear state, we are in a crisis place. And when we are in crisis, our RAS is looking for what's painful. It's going to look for betrayal. It's going to look for what's going to come against us. Now, here's what's interesting. 2 Harvard psychologists with their brain scans discovered that the area of the brain that holds fear and the area of the brain that holds the excitement are the same areas. So what we want to do is not get rid of the fear. We need to channel it into something that is actually productive. But to be able to do that, we need to stabilize. So like Angie was sharing with the tapping exercises and the VU and putting the hands out, and I was giving you the breathing exercises, that's going to stabilize you. And then you can begin to regulate yourself. And when you regulate, you're like, okay, I've got this fear, but I actually need to be able to use it. And that's when you start saying, I'm going to convert it. What is it that I want to do? So you can't wait till the fear hits to decide what you're going to do with it. Okay. It's what's known as borrowing trouble in psychological circles. When you set any type of goal, you know there's going to be a problem. So, okay, how am I going to handle it? Now, what's interesting is the problem that you typically think is going to happen isn't what happens at all. Something else catches you off guard. But if you do this enough, then your subconscious has been programmed and conditioned, or as Angie, as you said earlier, rewired, that when there's a problem, we find a way to solve it. And so you want to put together a protocol of, based on my past, this is how I'm going to project myself into the future. There's going to be something that happens. This is the system. This is the process that I'm going to be able to use to begin to stabilize me. And then I'm going to regulate it. This is what I want to do using what's unique about me and what I find valuable in the situation. Because those are the two higher levels of the RAS. What's unique about us, and then what's valuable that can be used. But you cannot see that from a fear state.
So give an example. Like in this case,
Okay.
we're going to get stabilized, and then we want to know ahead of time. We want to be proactive when we get triggered, to have enough awareness that we need to convert this fear energy into excitement energy or what have you. And when you say what's unique and valuable about us, can you give an example how you might do that?
Okay. So this was a little over 3 years ago. I went whitewater rafting. And I had never been before. And so what did I do? I picked the longest set of class 4 rapids, class 3 and 4 rapids in the United States. In fact, when we had the whitewater rafting Olympics, this is where we had it. So that's in Tennessee. Yeah. So that's what I decided. So I figured that there's something going to go wrong. What I figured was going to go wrong is I was somehow going to be ejected from the boat, or the raft, which at some point I was. Okay. But what's unique about me, and I think, Angie, you'll agree with me on this, that our listeners are very growth oriented.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's the one value that we all share. And so what's unique about me is I love to learn new things. So I looked up and said, what do you got to do if you get thrown from the boat? And then what's valuable is getting back in the boat as quick as possible before you hit another set of rapids.
Right.
Okay. So I looked at several different techniques of how to handle getting ejected from the boat. And in the training they gave us before we got out on the river, they also went over this a couple of times. But I had done a lot more study before that. I was going to be prepared. Well, yes, I did get ejected from the raft and got back into it. What I had not prepared for is that in one set of rapids, the raft actually got tipped. And I was in with 7 other guys in the raft. And so when we tipped, I was in the back, which meant I was actually in the bottom underneath everybody else. So whenever I finally made it to the surface, I made it to the surface, but underneath the raft. And those things are several hundred pounds. You can't flip it over. And so I was being carried down the river, down the rapids underneath the raft. Okay. But so what was unique about me is that I had already planned for problems. And I knew to try to stay out of the rapids as much as possible. So when I finally found a rock I could grab onto, I did, and stabilized myself against it. And then valuable, once you stabilize yourself, you're looking for the rescue team to come and get you, which they did. They got to the raft, they flipped it over and got me out. Okay. So what's unique is, what about us? So we have 6 levels that that showcase our uniqueness. We have a great way of creating certainty through processes and systems. We have a phenomenal way of finding freedom through agency, worthiness, pairing up with others, making life happen, validation, being willing to step into the spotlight and be seen, or being able to see others, growth, and then the type of leadership that is contribution. So those are the levels that will showcase what's phenomenal about us. And we typically have 2 that are on point.
Mm.
So that's what's unique. And then what's valuable? What do you want to experience in this situation? So Angie, can you think of a time whenever you were in a situation that was kind of scary and you decided, hey, this is what I want to experience and I'm going to find a way to make it happen?
Yeah. The first thought that came to me was I went several years ago to this, it was like a 3-day type of retreat. And it was with a hypnotist, actually. This was over, I think, in Vermont. And so what he did is he had us get into a van. Like, there were only like 5 of us. We got in a van and he had us put on blindfolds. And this was in November, by the way, in Vermont, which was really cold. And so he drives us out to some place. We don't know where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And then we finally arrive, we get out of the van and he's like, okay, so you can take your blindfolds off now. So we all took our blindfolds off and we look out and there's this flowing river, you know?
Oh.
And, and so what we're supposed to do is get in this river. And I have to tell you, it was so freezing cold outside. I mean, this water was freezing cold. Like, I've never been so cold in my life, but we were supposed to get into the water and immerse ourselves in it.
Okay.
Underneath the water. And, so anyway, I actually went out in the water. I was terrified. I don't like being cold, that freezing cold, but I did it. And I went out there and, it was all in the name of growth. It was all in the name of being able to overcome fears and to be our best self. But anyway, it was so funny because when I got out to the water, like, it felt like an eternity. So I started coming back, but he made me go back out again because I didn't get my head underneath the water. So I needed to go back out twice. When I got back into the van, I had icicles on my hair. That's how cold it was. Like, I think I said a few words.
Yeah.
But
you shared some things with him.
It helped me to see. So the uniqueness there was it was a growth opportunity.
Yes.
And what was value? What did I want to experience that was valuable? Well, I was doing it with other people. I wasn't alone, so it felt like a community.
Oh, yeah. You had other people had your back because fears will isolate us.
Right. But this, like, going beyond the fear and that you have what it takes to be successful. That was kind of the whole thing. So is that the valuable part of it? Like,
it is. Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah. I'm going to look for what's valuable in the experience. And sometimes it's growth moving into, and sometimes it's avoidance moving away from, to where we can go into an experience and go, okay, what was valuable about it is I know what I don't ever want to do again.
I don't want to do that again. That's true.
And saying, or I don't need to be around these people. So there is some sort of lesson. We need to take it out of the primal or the primitive category, and we need to bring it into our everyday awareness. We need to look at it in a rational way and say, what is a lesson here that can actually be used and used same day, if at all possible? And that's what keeps it from staying irrational or immature. It actually says, okay, let's integrate this. The fear isn't going to go away. We're going to optimize it. We're going to use it for something that actually can show up in our life as progress, but sometimes it needs to be protection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as we begin to conclude, what would you want that she's listening to you right now, And she's like, yeah, I've got a lot of people that I've had experiences with where I learned I couldn't trust them. And maybe she's feeling a little overwhelmed because she's so isolated because she's trying to do everything on her own because fear has kept her locked in to that younger version of her and she doesn't know how to move forward. What do you want her to know? What do you want her to do?
Well, I know to heal from that, we have to feel safe in our body. That's the
Yeah.
first step, is to learn how to feel safe and teach her things like the VU and EFT or self-hypnosis or whatever to bring herself back into stability. And then the second thing is to get support, to know that she is worthy of love and support and that she doesn't have to go this alone, that there are people out there who has her back, that get her, who are for her. And so that's the second step, is that support. And then the third step, just to help her to see that once she gets that safety in her body, that support in her body, feeling really like, oh my gosh, they care about me, they have my back, then
Right.
that's when we can really start doing the cognitive work, I believe, like
Right.
um and start changing those beliefs, which it can be
Yes.
done simultaneously, I suppose, like with hypnosis, to help them feel safe,
Yeah,
supported,
you can
and
work on
confident.
several levels at one time, but you do have to build a foundation. And what you said as far as getting support is so important because fears do not start on their own. They are learned. And because someone else was involved in learning that fear, then somebody else has to be involved in relearning it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we give the pain a purpose for progress, is we bring in somebody who can support. So speaking of support, if she wants to reach out, if she wants to contact you, how is she going to do that?
My website is www.harmonyharbor.com, HARBOR spelling.com. And my phone number is 1-314-422-6520. My
Okay.
email is Angie@harmonyharbor.com. And I do have an upcoming class called Mental Fitness for Intuitive Women Leaders.
Oh, do share.
Yeah. Right now it's scheduled for November 1 to begin.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been wondering and then checking in with my intuition, do I need to move that to January? I'm getting a sense because I'm starting a women's group tonight and there's just so much going on with the holidays that I may be moving that to January. But
Okay.
still, it's an 8-week course, in which they will learn positive intelligence.
All right. There we go. And the one thing that I want you to know, as a woman, or maybe a really smart man who has been struggling with the fear that has been holding you back, is that it has something to do with your higher purpose, and that we can only bring out that higher purpose when you build on a foundation of what are you certain on, what kind of freedom do you have, the worthiness that you hold, the validation, the growth, and the leadership. And they need to be done in that order. So if you want to reach out to me and we can discuss which one of those levels seems to be the one where it's really hard for you to move forward, you can go to canhypnosishelpyou.com or dawnlandrum.com, either of those sites. You'll have the ability to set a call with me where I can completely personalize and customize as my gift to you. What is it you need to do to be able to start building that foundation of fulfillment? Okay, Angie. So this month, the month of October, things that go bump in the night. Whenever you hear it, what are you going to do with it?
With the fear,
Mm-hmm.
I might do a VU. I did that
Mm-hmm.
this morning. And also, I think once the body's regulated, then we could go into some self-awareness too, and know that it's so normal to be afraid.
It
Like
is.
we're all afraid. Like on some level, everybody is. And I think that really integrating all those the fears and the parts that we just want to get rid of because they are afraid, that it's so important to integrate all of us. Like we all have the capacity for evil. You know, speaking of Halloween and October and
Monsters.
everything,
Yeah.
right? But we all have that. And so if we can accept that about ourselves and not push it away, that's when it can actually dissolve, you know? So,
Yes. And so when I hear things that go bump in the night, I'm going to bitch, moan, whine, and complain. I'm going to scream at the fear, but I'm not going to scream at the part of me
yeah,
that's
yeah,
feeling the fear.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The part of me that's feeling it, that's fine. We're going to relearn an upgraded response, but the fear itself is going to get a piece of my mind. Gosh darn it.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And please, whether it's Angie, myself, or someone else, reach out for that support and get a system in place for when the fear does show up. You know it's going to borrow that trouble and find a way to use it to actually move you into your fulfillment. Until we get together again, blessings on your journey. Bye now.